As Alan just mentioned, we do this Change the World list. This is our third time doing it. And I believe we have a cover for is the cover up there? Can you see cover on either side? This is we've highlighted 128 major companies and about 15 smaller companies over the last 3 years that have been, as part of their core operating businesses, as part of what they do normally, have been changing the world. They've been solving some sort of problem. They've been helping the environment. They've been getting people on the economic grid and getting lives started. And they've done this because it works for them as a business. Yes, it solves some problem. It has a benefit to society, but it's core to what they do as businesses. And so it satisfies all of their shareholders. We've had, as I said, 120 companies, 3 number ones though, and this year I'm pleased to say that Jamie Dimon and JPMorgan Chase are the number 1 company. And what we found so extraordinary, and I urge you all to read the story that Matt Heimer wrote in this current issue, but is that you have a very strategic, business-focused plan to solve one of the most impenetrable, most difficult problems there are, which is revitalizing America's cities. And you started with Detroit. Why Detroit?
Yeah, so thank you and welcome everybody. And I did try to get fortune to put the team on the cover there.
You did.
So I'm very proud of JPMorgan Chase, and they always give the CEO too much credit because we had literally hundreds of people working in this in Detroit. So Detroit, we're the largest bank in Detroit, consumer, small business, large corporate. So it's one of our hometowns, effectively. One of our predecessors was started by General Motors in the Great Depression. It was also the only major city that had completely collapsed. I mean, most cities had some kind of recovery. And then believe it or not, it was Lee Sanders of AFSCME who mentioned to me how bad things were in Detroit for the average worker. And I said, boy, we could help there, we should be working on stuff like that. And he's actually been very helpful to us. But more important than that, we saw a governor, Republican, and a mayor, Democrat, a white man who had gone door to door and got elected on a write-in vote, talking about practical solutions to help the people of Detroit. Sanitation, streetlights on, crime, jobs, affordable housing, not ideology, and not like just give us the money. So we sent Peter Scheer, who runs our corporate social responsibility, went up there, brought a team of people and said, what can we do to help uniquely? Not just throw money at something. And so, in that story, they actually give the details, a lot of analytics. How do you develop micro neighborhoods? Where do they need the training? How do you get effective, affordable housing? And we want to be an accelerant for all those things. And we figure, if we can help in Detroit, you can help anywhere. And so to me, Detroit was like a great experiment, which is working. It's still early, to tell the truth. And by the way, a lot of your companies are doing stuff in Detroit too. So this is not a JPMorgan story. It's a story of people coming together to try to help a city that had gone from 2 million in population to 700,000. And think of what it does to the tax base and schools and jobs and something like that.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up the data point of this shrinking population and disappearing jobs. But another data point, which is key, which is that you control about 65% of the consumer banking market. You have a large part of the business banking market. This is a huge area for JPMorgan Chase. So this was, these were potentially depositors who were on the hook. I mean, you were on the hook for. So this is a fundamental business driver to help make this work.
Yeah, we always thought that this should enhance the economy, which obviously would be good for JPMorgan. So it wasn't that we didn't think, but we've done better there since then because we've kind of become the hometown bank in Detroit, and we've earned a lot of respect and trust there. But yeah, I think business, I've always looked at anything you do in corporate social responsibility, and I've never had this conflict between shareholders and corporate social responsibility. I look at business kind of very personally. If I have a store in a town, it could be a corner bakery store, you participate in the neighborhood. You help the homeless, you might help the local church or synagogue, a little league team, might give some summer jobs. That's what you do. That is called humanity. I've never been conflicted in that. And the difference here was we were trying to do things that JPMorgan could do uniquely to help. Just like a lot of your companies can do things that we probably couldn't. So we've kind of focused corporate social responsibility on entrepreneurs, and mostly of people of color. Education, work skills, affordable housing, things like that.
So I want to drill down because part of why we're here isn't just to sort of highlight the work you've done, but to actually treat it like a case study. Mm-hmm. So you built an ecosystem. The first thing you had to deal with is, as there's some line in the story that says it takes a village to build a city. You had worked with community development banks. You brought your own expertise in from the bank. Tell me why that was so important, the latter part.
Yeah, because you need analytics. They had something like, I think it was like 50,000 abandoned homes. They didn't know where they were. So how do you plan? You have to knock some down, revitalize others, refurbish others, rehab them. And
you did a map of blight.
Someone came up with an idea, and we helped fund it. Of course, $1 million. At a rate, the loan rate or ROE of like 6 or 7%. We're not going for a market rate here. We're just trying to get our money back. So we can recycle it, by the way.
So you've got the service core at JPMorgan Chase, and part of this, what this really means is you've got people all throughout the company with different areas of expertise that actually spend some time to come in here and help individual business owners create a business plan and apply for a loan and make sure that they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's on all these forms. Yeah. How important is that to this success of something like that?
It was critical because, and it was really neat, and again, it was someone else's idea. It was Peter Shear's idea and we've done it over and over. It was a group of 12 that would go in and they would help focus hope. They needed help in how you manage human resources they retrained kids in robotics and machine tools. And 3 of them went in and did that for 6 weeks or something like that. And then we did it for these entrepreneurial help or somebody's affordable housing. These kids they are picked by senior management, so they are talented. And they're not kids. Some of them, they're gone for, I forgot, 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. But when I walked in the room, first of all, the person said, "We have dinner. If it can't fit 12, we don't go. We go to dinner every night together." But they were from Singapore, Mumbai, Hong Kong, New Orleans, Dallas. And now we've done hundreds of these groups, not just in Detroit now, we've done them in other parts of the world, and they love it. And Alan had mentioned that people like working for companies that do good. By the way, Alan, that was true when I graduated high school. We wanted to do good too, but they really like this, and it bonds them to the company, and they enjoy the fact that helping just lift people up. Some are mothers who they're thrilled to be doing what they're doing. I said, "But you left your kid for 4 weeks." They said, "This is so good for me and the company. I want to do it."
So the other lesson in here is that you need a partner. You have to have partners both in the local community of community development financing corps, but also in government. And you've mentioned this as a real sticking point, that you needed somebody you could work with.
Yeah, I say it's a sine qua non lesson. Right. If you go into any place and it's like, "Give me the money, we'll take it from there," don't do it. They have got to agree up front to do some very basic things, then you can work with them. Because I've always thought that collaboration, 85% of all jobs are private enterprise, 85%. And the thought that somehow that you're not going to have business being involved in creating jobs and healthy business environment, but some governments, they are corrupt. They won't do anything. They're stuck in the mud. They're not going to change anything, and so don't help them. And so one of the things we're doing with this Work Skills Initiative is that we now kind of bid it out by city. And if the city's willing to line up the state and the city with the right way to do it, we'll go in and help, and if they're not, we won't. And we're going to start evaluating the cities. I don't know if we're going to make it public or not, something that you guys should probably make
Oh
public.
yeah, definitely make it public. Yeah.
Because you saw what happened in Detroit was, mismanagement for 30 years. But you're seeing the same thing, which I'm not going to go through which cities, the same thing happening in certain cities and states today. The train wreck is already happening. It just won't actually happen for another 15 years. And unless someone does something, then you have the disaster. And it was a shame that, that Detroit had to go bankrupt, to get some of the stuff. Actually, we were there before it went bankrupt, but before you got some of the stuff going.
So in a second, I want to get some questions from your fellow CEOs. And when you do, just indicate that you have a question. We'll call on you. Please stand up and use the mic because we're actually live streaming this. And without the mic, you'll just be, mouthing with empty words. But, today, actually, we'll break some news. You just announced another city that you were investing in. So you had already had Detroit, then you had an investment in Chicago. This is your third city.
Right.
Which one?
Yeah, so this is Washington, D.C. It was announced this morning. It's $10 million. It may be the beginning of a much bigger thing. It's in 2 wards that really need help. But it's the same thing. As Peter Schooner's team went through, they got the mayor's help. They got the help of some of the local CDFIs, affordable housing, so that hopefully this will also work to lift up the people of those 2 wards. As you know, because you lived in D.C.,
yeah.
D.C. is literally a tale of 2 cities. Detroit was almost a tale of 1 city.
And this could be a blueprint for revitalizing urban America. Yeah. But as we saw today in a report by Axios, a lot of the most distressed communities are actually between the coasts in the middle of the country, where they're outside of the major industrial areas. Is it possible to do this in a smaller community setting?
One other little thing that it just seems to be blind obvious. When we talk here, we're talking to each other. You kind of already know this, to tell you the truth. And I think the business has to go on, and I urge all of you to do it, go on the morning shows. 4 million people watch CBS, ABC, NBC, and they don't know all the good things you do. They don't understand that you already pay well above living wages, get full medical, get full pension, and that most of you are very philanthropic in a very organized way trying to help society. So, but you're absolutely correct. I think one of the things in society, there have been these things left behind. It's not really because of trade sometimes, it's not really because of technology sometimes, but they are left behind, and we've done a terrible job, and we being collectively the leadership of America, in trying to make sure all of our citizens kind of don't fall behind. And so, and Axios put that thing out today that showed, a lot of places still suffering. And that's there's a norm as that society is always adjusting, but I think we could do a far better job in education, relocation, income assistance that leads to jobs. There are 5 million open jobs in America. A lot of these jobs, aviation, automotive, nursing, phlebotics, robotics, machine learning, coding, they're well paying. And these kids, and there's a school right over here, the aviation school, across the 59th Street Bridge, and there's a school, Alfred E. Smith, an automotive school. These kids graduate $18,000, $40,000 to $70,000 a year. Okay, and their parents want them to go there. They're proud of them. And so we have to do a better job, and that's got to be done locally. Connecting jobs up. Germany does a great job locally. What does the local businesses need? And the local business have to get involved in training, certification, and then giving them jobs. Saying, if do you meet these goals? They got a job when they leave that high school or vocational school. And
let's get a question here. Somebody, we have a question? Somebody? Okay. Up right there, Rich. We have a mic for Rich. Oh.
Hi, Rich Batista, President and CEO of Time Inc. Jamie, when you look at what you've embarked on in Detroit, how do you think about measurable goals or metrics? Are there, 3 years from now, we're hoping for X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, we had.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, some of it's judgmental. So when we started this thing, someone said, "Well, what if it doesn't work? You'll have egg in your face." And my attitude, I had the same attitude. So what? Wake up in the morning and give it your best. That's what I do every week, every day, every month. That's what I do. Yeah, sure, these things may not work. So some are very specific. Affordable housing, returns, capital, occupation, cost of getting it done. The entrepreneur stuff is very specific. You expect some success and some failure. The work skills is very specific to the extent that these kids get the training and they get a job. And so, some are a little bit less specific. You don't know, like we're building the M1 rail line between, we're helping fund it between downtown Detroit and Wayne State University. That's a belief. You have a belief that if you hook those things up, it'll create nightlife, it creates business along the way. and it won't be built for years. So it's kind of a hope and a dream. But there's nothing wrong with that. And if any of you have been to Detroit 10 years ago, you would not have walked around downtown Detroit at night. It was barren. Today you go down there and there's music and there are restaurants and there are lights and it's not all wealthier people. You know, it's not all, you know, it's not the gentrification only of Detroit. It's people coming back to Detroit.
We have another question here? Yeah, we've got, hi, how are you, Julie? Can we get a mic for Julie?
Hi, Julie Sweet, CEO of Accenture North America. Jamie, as you think about going into the cities, how are you thinking about it, given a room full of CEOs, many of us doing things, including, for example, in DC, about connecting up your investments with the other companies who may be able to help? And sort of I don't know if you did that in Detroit, how are you thinking about it? Because I think you have a room full of CEOs who probably in many of these cities could be connecting.
Yeah. Almost everything we did in Detroit was somebody else. So the affordable housing was with Invest Detroit, both local and sometimes national things. The work skills, everything we do is with people who've done it successfully in community college and stuff like that. The rehab, we actually give the bottom layer, and the loans actually be made by Liberty Bank. So every single one we're doing with anyone who can do it with. We're not trying to take credit for it. One of the things that we did, and just an example of philanthropy, was this veterans effort, unrelated to this, but we started this 100,000 veteran effort. And we got Stanley McChrystal and Roger Staubach and a lot of people, and we did real work on how do you get these kids graduating. Remember, these kids who are coming out of the military, they could be 21 to colonels. How do you get them jobs? How do they write resumes? What are their skills? We went to the base. We did real work. We started the mission, and someone wanted to call it the JPMorgan 100,000 Jobs Mission. And I said, absolutely not, because I know one thing for sure. If you call it the JPMorgan 100,000 Jobs Mission, nobody else will join. For good reason, because you're there for your own companies. You're not there for my company. So it's the 100,000 Jobs Mission. You join, everyone gets equal billing. Everyone shares equal data. We've hired 400,000 vets. It's like 300 companies. The mission is now 1 million. So there's a thing about when companies get involved, sometimes they should move beyond their own parochial interest and figure a way to make it work for everybody, because the job was getting jobs for vets. It wasn't enhancing JPMorgan's reputation. And so we try to be very focused on what's the outcome you want, how you're going to get it, who can you work with to get it properly.
Speaking of JP Morgan's reputation, so I mean, you just made $7 billion in your last quarter and another $7 billion before that. And if you wanted to, put a couple of hundred, $1,000 on the moon and send it up in a rocket ship, your shareholders are going to be fine with that, essentially, as long as you just keep delivering. Maybe not that. All right. So that was an exaggeration.
Yeah,
but you can pretty much get away with a lot because they trust you.
But even Jeff Bezos is doing Blue Origin outside of Amazon.
Okay, exactly. So, but the challenge for a lot of other companies is, how do they go ahead and make the bold move into these kinds of, they're long-term investments, when they don't necessarily have that kind of credibility?
Yeah. Well, no, I think a lot of companies have the credibility. And remember, like I said, a lot of the jobs is local. So it's just your people saying, what do you need locally, and go to a community college and start that pipeline. Mm-hmm. And a lot of companies have different skills. You're going to see a lot of CEOs up today, they can do things that we simply can't do. We don't have their skills, their knowledge, or we're not in that town or something like that. So I think anyone can do it, anyone can do it locally. That Veterans Job Mission is 300 companies, but a lot of smaller ones doing it locally. There's some doing it nationally, like Walmart. Obviously, you can do it in a lot of different places like we can.
Yeah. We have another question here, somewhere in the room. Yeah, Steve. I was hoping you were going to ask you a question. No, we need it for the live stream. Thanks.
Steve Case, first of all, thank you for your leadership. The fact that you are so respected, and JPMorgan so respected, investing in places like Detroit, now DC, really sends a signal. So thank you for that. Just building on one of the things you said, that backing entrepreneurs in the middle of the country. Last year, 75% of venture capital went to 3 states. 75%. So when we talk about people in the middle of the country feeling left out and left behind, they have been left out and left behind. You're doing it in Detroit, now you're doing it in DC. What message would you send to other people in terms of why it's important to be doing this in the middle of the country? Yeah.
So I think, for part of it is, when you do it where you have knowledge, so like you go to Detroit, some of these entrepreneurs, they were doing the lighting. They could get a government contract, but they didn't have you have to have $500,000 to be able to sign the the contract or something like that. So you actually were financing future business. So I think a lot of people here could go to your suppliers and your vendors. You'll find the same thing. So I would say do it close to home or something like that. You know, for JPMorgan, we do it where we are, but I do think if you go to, you're going to have Hamdi up here, and I forgot, he's in Twin Falls, Idaho. He did it with one plant. I helped revitalize the whole city. There are tons of cities where we can all go into, put a plant or a data center or something that'll make a difference in that city. So I think we need to do it. And I think we need to do it with government. You know, you can't save everything, but you certainly should do things that make sense for people. And the entrepreneur stuff is fun. I would do, if you got involved, you just find it just really fun what they're doing. It's uplifting. You know, they tell you how hard, like one of them has started a bakery shop, and she was working, she said, I get up at 3 a.m., I bake. She said, nothing's ever been harder. I didn't expect it to be as hard, but I've never been prouder of myself. My family's never been prouder of me, you know, and I can take care of my parents. You know, there are things that just come out of it that just are beautiful things. And
Thank you. Jamie Dimon, JPMorgan Chase, our #1 Change the World company for 2017. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy the conference, folks.